Hey guys, we're here today to do an installation of our Willfit Gudgeon on this kayak that is otherwise very difficult to motorize. So what we have, aside from our plug-and-play adapters, we do have a few more involved adapters that help us put a motor on a kayak that's not really made for a motor, but we have gotten around by being a little creative and creating ways to put a motor on kayaks like this. So if you come back here, you'll see that this kayak, we don't have a power pole plate in the back here in any way. There's really no flat area here to put a gudgeon in. You'll notice some holes we've already drilled in this kayak. This is sort of our experimental kayak, so it's got lots of little holes and blemishes on it already. But that's fine. We're going to use this today, and we're going to use our gudgeon. This is a very proud Bixpy creation. And what we've done is we've created a way to put a 10mm hole for a gudgeon pin on the back of pretty much any kayak. And you've got all of these holes here that allow you to sort of adapt this to the bodies of most kayaks. What you really want to make sure is you always stay above waterline when you're drilling holes in your kayak. This thing is stainless steel, so it'll never rust, and it is flexible. So you're able to sort of mold this to wrap around whatever kayak you've got. The reason we've put this lip on the back here is we found that on most kayaks, you'll be able to get this guy, this L shape, to basically plug in. And whether it touches the kayak or not is not even relevant. You can actually bolt right into the body of the kayak, and the bolts will just be sticking out. So we're gonna go ahead and install this, and you'll see what the process is. You do need some tools for this. So the gudgeon comes with a pack of nuts and bolts and even some rivets. So what's really important is you either have access to the inside of your kayak or you got to use rivets. So it's one or the other. On this kayak, we've actually put a hatch on the kayak. You can buy these hatches from Amazon or online anywhere, or West Marine. About $8 to $10, and you just drill a hole. This way you get access to the inside of your kayak, nice and easy, and you'll be able to do nuts and bolts. So we're going to try and do nuts and bolts on this, and we'll see, depending on these holes, we might even rivet a couple of them in, so you'll see what that process is. You will need a rivet gun if you're going to use the rivets, and aside from that, you'll need a 7, 8, and a 10mm wrench for the bolts. You'll need a Sharpie, Phillips screwdriver, a drill, and some drill bits to get these holes drilled into the kayak. But that's about it. Oh, and we do need, of course, some silicone. So anytime you've got a hole in there, before you put the screws and nuts and bolts in there, you want to put some silicone around it. So make sure it's nice and watertight. So let's get started. So the first thing we want to do is we want to make sure this has got a good fit on the kayak. Now again, we've done this kayak had one of these gudgeons on it already, so it's pre-drilled for it. But we're going to go through the motions anyway, just so you guys see how it works. So this is a brand new gudgeon. It's never been on this kayak. So when you first put it on, you'll see that it's not really fitting. So we're going to open up this side a little bit. And again, you can do this. It's flexible enough that you can sort of muscle these around. And you'll see that once you get it sort of centered there, it is already starting to fall onto those holes that we had pre-drilled. So I'm going to bend this a little bit. This a little bit. Okay, so I've got this where I want it now, and you'll even see actually we're sort of coinciding with those holes that we had there before. So I am going to mark those holes just to be sure. You can use some tape or clamps to hold this down if you need to. On this kayak, it's fairly straightforward, so I don't need to do that. I do have my holes up here as well. I'm going to use the second set of holes on this guy right here to do that. Again, this is flexible, so once we're done with the installation, if we want to, we can push this down, or we can even cut this with a saw if you don't want that piece of metal, and then just sand off the top to make sure it's not going to cut your hands. I'm going to mark this side as well. Okay. Now back here, if you come and take a look, you'll see that I've already got 2 holes drilled in here on the bottom, and that's where we're going to use some longer bolts to get right through the body of the kayak. And to do those, you're not going to be able to do that with rivets. You are going to need to use nuts and bolts to do that. So let's put this guy in place. So I'm going to drill out those holes we've done because we've filled them with a bit of plastic. So just to show you guys how we're going to do this, I'm going to rivet two of these, and I'm going to use nuts and bolts on the other two, just so you see that it's possible to do both. So if we are using rivets, we don't need access to the inside of the kayak, and that's the nice thing about rivets. The not so nice thing is you can't always use rivets. They're not conducive to every scenario. So here we go. We're going to try and do that. So we're going to do one here. And if you've ever used a rivet gun, you'll know how it's going to work. Okay, so there's our first one in. Okay. So you can already see we're getting pretty sturdy already. And we've only got 2 rivets on. Okay. Now I've got my 2 holes on top as well. So again, I can either use nuts and bolts or I can use rivets. I'm going to do the rivets because I like the rivets a lot. They're nice and simple when they work. So we're going to put 2 rivets on top as well, and they're nice and flush on top. So we'll put one in there, and we'll put another one in here. There we go. So now we've got the top and we've got the sides, and we're going to go for the next 2 screws. And you can put more bolts in here if you want, but really 2 on each side is more than enough. And you'll see once we're done with this, you'll be able to lift this kayak with this gudgeon. So there won't be any issues there. We got some M5s in here. So we're going to put our M5 bolts into the second set of holes. I'm going to use a screwdriver to do that. Be a little bit easier. There we go. I'm going to reach in from inside and put one of these nuts on it. This is kind of tricky without getting my head in the way. And I can feel yeah, there it is. Perfect, we got it. And we need our 8 mil for that. And now you can understand why I prefer the rivets, because with the rivets we were done already. So, and the same goes on this side. So. Okay, so we've got a set of nuts and bolts on each side and a pair of rivets. So this is now holding nice and tight. Now we want to go for the bottom, and we want to secure this to those 2 holes that are on the bottom of the kayak. So we've got some M6s here that are nice and long. These do ship with your kayak. Now there is a possibility that whatever setup you've got may not, may require more nuts and bolts. Best thing you can do is just local hardware store and make sure you're buying stainless steel stuff so you avoid corroding. And you can see that that's long enough to go in there. I'm going to reach in from the other side and put one of these M6s in there. And I'm going to use my 10 mil here to make sure that this is the right. Oh, sorry, that is not an M6. That is an M5 actually. So my 8 millimeter is gonna do the job. That's the 7, and there is the 8. Okay. Reach in there again. And there is a hole here. This hole is exactly for this purpose, is for you to be able to get your screwdriver in there. Now before I tighten this, I definitely want to get some silicone into that little, into that hole. So we're going to do that. Although seeing how big that hole is, I think I'm going to tighten this first, and then we'll put all silicone in there after. That's the wrong one again. Nice and tight. And I'm going to go ahead and do the second one now. And we're going to speed this up. So. Okay, so we've got our two nice long bolts here. We've got our other bolts on the side and our rivets, obviously. I did forget to put a bit of silicone on the bolts especially, so you definitely want to do that. But most importantly right now, what I do want to do is I want to put some silicone on the bottom screws for sure, because those are quite open and we don't want that to be exposed at all. Okay, so now we have our gudgeon on the kayak, and like I said, guys, this is on here so well. You could lift the kayak with this, you could carry the kayak with the gudgeon. The gudgeon is on there. Like, this thing is very, very solid. And again, as I said, you can either bend this little lip that's out here, you can either bend it down if you want it out of your way a little bit, like so. Or you can, if you really wanted to, you could cut it, sand the edges, and you'll be fine. So now, that was the hardest part of this. The easy part now is our plug and play adapters. So this is the gravity rudder that we sell as our universal rudder. And most of you know there is an installation link for this on the bottom of the video. So you go if you want to see how to install this, but I'm going to do a quick installation anyway. The bottom of this got 4 bolts. Once you take those bolts off, it comes off, and our J-2 motor fits right onto that rudder. So nice and easy. So I'm going to go ahead. Like I said, we got a 10mm pin on this rudder. 10mm pin goes right in there. We put our through pin, lock it into place, and we are good to go. And then we've got our Bixpy motor here. And the Bixpy motor comes, as does the rudder, with these 4 nuts and bolts. Again, you need your 7mm wrench for this and your Phillips screwdriver. And there's our Bixpy motor going on to the rudder. Your rudder does come with a cord that you can run up to your kayak. You can pull the rudder up like so and lock it into place with a clamp cleat that's also in the rudder. Again, the installation guide for this is, the full installation guide for this rudder is in the link below, so check that out if you want to learn how to do that all the way. So there is our, the good thing about this gudgeon is you got some space down here, so you can actually run your cable under it, be nice and tidy. Runs to your battery. We're going to keep our battery in the back here. You should definitely hold on to this, because one day if you don't want to use your motor, you can put this back on and you just have a full rudder now. So, and that's it. Now, you'll notice here, we do have some steering lines from a previous installation on here that go to our Bixpy hand steering. So I'm just going to plug those right in there, and I hope they're going to reach. That's it, guys. There is the installation of our Willfit Gudgeon and our universal rudder adapter for this very generic, quite cheaply priced kayak that we picked up from a big box store at some point. And again, we've got our hand steering here to turn that rudder. That's it. That's our full installation. There is also an installation for the hand steering linked below. So if you want to see how to install that hand steering, there is a link for that below as well. But that's it. That's how you motorize pretty much any kayak that has sort of an awkward back where you can't put a power pole plate or your other sort of plug and play adapters. Hope you enjoyed the video. See you on the water.